It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day to be a neighbor. Would you be mine? Won't you be mine? Won't you be my barbershop and snowy neighbor? I always wanted to do that. What's up, Barbershop Talk, Minnesota? It's a snowy day out there. It's a Friday, but it does look beautiful. Not best for the roads, but it looks beautiful. I'm sure the kids love the snow out there, and the temps are not bad for Minnesota, so we got to rejoice on that. But welcome again to Barbershop Talk, Minnesota. It is Friday. We don't typically do shows on Fridays, but we have a special guest today that can only be here today on 2/24/20 this Friday, so we wanted to make sure that you get an eye of this guest and he's introduced to our audience. He's not unknown. He's running for U.S. Congress, Mr. Dan Feehan. Yes, he will be here when we jump over to the Barbershop Talk studio here in a minute. But again, welcome to our show. We appreciate who you are. We appreciate all the positive compliments we get for what we are doing, and we are growing and growing here. Paul Wellstone said, we all do better when we all do better, and that is the focus of our show here at Barbershop Talk. Just to get you in the know, you should already know, but let's remind you, we have our first annual Barbershop Talk and Barbershop Social Services calendar, leadership calendar. There are two focuses of that calendar. One is to fundraise. We wanted to be a part of making our community better other than doing our show and the various things that we do, and make sure that we are donating to local organizations as they make a difference with our clientele and with our community. So the proceeds from this calendar that will go to Seeds of Wisdom Academy. It's a Black-owned and operated academy and daycare here in the community. It's been making a difference in lives for the longest, and we want to definitely support that entity as it's doing great things in our community. And then also the proceeds go to what we are doing here at Barbershop and Social Services and Barbershop Talk South Minnesota. We are going, we are growing, we are grassroots, but as you know, as we grow, we need to add different cameras and different things, so we need to begin to fundraise and do different things to make us bigger and better for what we do. So please make sure you buy a calendar. And again, it goes to two great causes, and it will make a difference in our community. The second thing I wanted to make sure you know about this community, this calendar, is we wanted to make sure that we have positive imagery about our African American people and minorities in our community. Often, as the media does, and it is what it is, we're not blaming the media, we often don't see positive images of who we are as Black people, as minorities, and as voiceless folks. So that is the focus of this calendar as well. So make sure you buy one, and we are asking you to buy one. All 450 or so people that have liked us as we continue to grow, we want all 450 of you to buy a calendar, as this money will go to a good cause. So please jump in. All right, what's going on in our community? We need to let you know of all the shows that are going on. We are really busy. We just had Wale Elekbidi last Saturday. This week we got 3 shows going on. Today, the comedy show is going to stop by to give us an update on their show that is going on tonight here on this Friday at the Rochester Civic Theater. And then we have Dan Feehan here at 2 p.m. who's going to give us a show. And then tomorrow we have the Superintendent of Rochester Public Schools, Mr. Michael Munoz. Great man, running the second largest business or entity in our state, in our town, that being Rochester Public Schools. We want to talk with this man as he's doing many great things. So he will be here tomorrow, January 25th at 10 a.m. So make sure you tune into those shows. Check out these other things that are going on in our community.
At Greenhouse Graphics, we offer award-winning design services at affordable rates to help your business attract customers and ultimately affect your bottom line. Working with you one-on-one at whatever stage you're at in developing your brand. I want to help drive success to your business with excellent design and quality marketing materials. From startup companies in need of custom graphics, websites, logos, to seasonal maintenance, I got you covered. I take time and listen and care about your needs. I understand that image and quality mean everything in business when it comes to leaving a lasting impression on your clients and customers that lasts a lifetime. With nearly 2 decades of experience, it is in my DNA to create eye-popping graphics for your business. Greenhouse Graphics, making sure you always look your best.
All right, Barbershop Talk, as we do in the barbershop and barbershops across the nation, in our minority communities, we keep it real, we keep it 100, we keep it therapeutic in the barbershop. And so we have our Keep It 100 segment in which we try to rub shoulders on some topics and keep it real. All right, our first topic for today with the congressman or congressman candidate, got to be careful there, is Zion. Is he hype or is this man sent from heaven? He just had his first game in the NBA after being on the DL, and now, what is it? Is he going to be the guy or not? We'll talk about Zion. And then how about our Timberwolves? Are they just a farm club for the NBA, or are they the little brother of the Lynx who won 4 championships in recent years? Our Timberwolves seem to struggle. Are they just a B squad for the NBA? We'll talk about that. And then who you got? Got the Super Bowl coming up in 2 Sundays. San Francisco against Kansas City. Who's going to win this thing? We'll check that out. We'll talk about that. And then in the Donnie You Crazy segment, the U.S. Congress means nothing to average black folk. Is that true? Is our U.S. Congress important to everything that goes on the ground here in Rochester? And we'll talk about that. So get ready for our Keep It 100 segment. All right, Barbershop Talk folk. As we said, we have candidate for U.S. Congress, Dan Feehan, here today. He's a fun guy running for office. We need to let you know we also invited current Congressman Mr. Hagedorn to come to our show as well. So hopefully he'll jump in and come with us. But today we have Dan Feehan. This will be a great show. Here we go. All right, welcome to Barbershop Talk here on a Friday. It is 1/24/20. We're thankful that you tuned in. It's snowing outside. It's real beautiful, and the weather is balmy as it relates to Minnesota. So we're really thankful for that. Thank you for tuning in. As well, Paul Wellstone said, we all do better when we all do better, and that's what we're about at this show. We are about the at-risk community, the voiceless community, the African-American community, all communities, and that's what we are here for. So thank you for tuning in. Right off the bat, I need to let you know we have our leadership calendar out, and we've been advertising that. There are 2 purposes for that. One is to fundraise Seeds of Wisdom Academy, and also Barbershop and Social Services here. We're growing. We need to get cameras and different things here. So get into that fundraising. We have about 450 likes and being our second year. We want to sell 450 calendars if we can. So make sure hit that like button. 2, as we know, sometimes our media has bad images of minority folks, African Americans, and so on. And we're not blaming the media, but But another purpose of this calendar is to show minorities and African Americans in a great light, the great people of this community and what they do. So please help us with that calendar. It is for our community, and make sure you buy those. So, to my left here is a great dude, Dan Feehan, and we're thankful that you are here.
Thank you, Tom.
We're going to get into it with Dan in a little bit. But as we do, let's get into some Keep It 100 topics, gentlemen, if you will. Zion Williamson, a couple of days ago, dropped 21 points.
21 or 22?
22.
Yeah.
17 in the quarter?
Yes.
My question is he the real deal?
Still to be determined.
To be, you're getting a lot of what do you think?
We'll see what happens if they make the playoffs.
If they make the playoffs.
We'll see what
Percent with his weight.
Yeah.
Gonna make it from Berkeley with the pressure.
Third largest dude in the NBA. So we're not going to give him the LeBron, Jordan hype yet.
No, we can't tag him yet, man.
Not yet. Manute Ball, maybe.
So I remember, if you remember, I think LeBron's first game almost triple-double. And so it almost had the feeling people were trying to hype it to that level.
Right.
4 threes, all very open shots.
Yeah.
They seem to be daring him.
You're right.
Daring him to shoot, which, look, you can hit an open three. You should be in the NBA, but I don't know about after that.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Tune in tonight. I think it's second game tonight.
I did pick the Pelicans to make the playoffs with him, so I do have some,
Ooh, they're like 12 right now, Dan.
They got ways to go. As to the Timberwolves.
I think they can make it. I picked them to go too.
Oh,
There we
really?
go.
I
There we
picked
go.
them to go. They can be in the top.
There we go.
We got
In the West.
Yes.
Are y'all sure?
I think.
You said y'all the same guys probably picked the Timberwolves, right?
Yeah.
I actually did. I like the Timberwolves.
You know the Timberwolves. All right. Dan, we hear that you are a great Timberwolves fan.
I am, unfortunately, yes.
Are the Timberwolves a farm club, or are they the little brother to the Lynx? Because the Lynx is a 4 champion.
Yeah, that's it, which doesn't get enough credit or talked about enough. I mean,
Right.
the true champion of Minnesota, at least in any time in recent memory.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's up with the Timberwolves? They go to. I mean, the last time they were in the playoffs or played to significance was Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
I think they were going against L.A.
04 Western Conference Finals.
There we go.
Sometimes I'll tweet sarcastically and say your 2004 Western Conference finalists, Minnesota Timberwolves are, and then I'll talk about them. Because that's our greatest claim to fame still in franchise history.
Hopefully we don't lose Townsend, because we tend to groom the forward, right?
Yep.
And they leave.
And he leaves. And he's in a pretty long-term deal now, so we got time to work it out.
On that?
Yeah, I feel we're still. I mean, trading Teague was a big deal because that was still one of the big lasting parts of the Tom Thibodeau era.
Right.
And I think I really like Gerson Rosas. He's well respected. He's shaking things up doing those trades. I think give him another chance. But the one I still worry about, I am a diehard, known on my campaign for being on Andrew Wiggins' Island, as in still a believer. And that's a tough one.
He's great, he's talented, but he's not motivated, it seems. It's like, hey, I'm playing basketball, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm still a believer. I can't shake it. I don't know.
Now your crazy segment, okay? This is dedicated to the one individual, the friend in the barbershop that says the craziest things ever, and you're sitting down thinking, that dude's crazy. And then sometimes you're like, maybe he's right. Maybe. The statement is the U.S. Congress, you ready for this? Doesn't mean anything to average black folk or people, regular folks. The U.S. Congress doesn't mean anything. That's why folks don't come out to vote. What do you think?
There is plenty of reason to be cynical about politics.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people every single day from any type of community you can think of who can point at politics and say it's divisive. It's just people blaming the other side. Why should I pay attention to it?
Right.
And let alone, I'm busy. I have a lot to do in my life, and the little bit I have to pay attention, and I see that type of politics
Right.
now. And so there's plenty of reason to be cynical.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is it doesn't change until people get involved and have their voice.
That's true. That's true.
And we will continue to get that cynical type of politics until people do get involved. But it's not a cart horse thing. You have to have candidates that they can rely on, that they're going to fight for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to do with our campaign, to have it be an inclusive place.
Right.
With a really simple motto: people first.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think another reason people hate politics and have a reason to say it doesn't do anything for me is because there are ways in which it's failed to deliver time and time again
Right.
for working people.
Mm.
And that's what we are trying to change, because if you campaign that way, then
Do you think, well, we can get, and no matter where they vote, and certainly we get into you individually, you can get that average person to vote, because it's, I remember some statistic, like there's so many millions of people that don't vote.
Yes.
But yet, the Trump campaign, the Obama campaign for sure, it really got people out of their chairs to vote.
Yeah.
Do you think current politics can energize folks that just don't vote?
I really do, especially from younger generations. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
I'm a millennial myself. Generation Z appears to be realizing that the older
You're a
generations.
millennial?
Yes, sir.
I think I'm old.
It's all good.
Oh no, we won't get into
It's all right. I think there's something unique about younger generations realizing the power that they have, and when they get up and activate around certain key issues, they realize you can deliver on them too. You see that happening across southern Minnesota. Really neat community of Worthington, Minnesota, southwest corner of the state. A really diverse community too, in which, in particular, communities of color rallied and organized to pass a bond referendum to actually fund the school system fully.
That's great.
And it passed on the 6th try.
A lot of Sudanese folks down in that area.
It's Worthington's incredible. It's incredibly diverse. People coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and it's a strong community too. But when you experience success in organizing, you realize the power you have, right, Brittany? I mean, that's just what comes from it.
Yeah.
There's communities like that across southern Minnesota, and we really feel 2020 is a moment for that.
Right, absolutely.
And again, a campaign that people can find a voice where previously politics has made them feel
Right.
that it's not for them.
Well, great, gentlemen. Y'all think that we can get our community out to vote? And the census is this year as well.
Census is this year, and they actually need people, so if you
That's
guys
it.
wanna work for the census, contact the census board. They need people to get out and spread the word and get the count, so.
I heard they're paying $25. an hour.
22 to 25, I just talked to the person, the representative.
Yeah. In
It's
fact, I
started
think we should have a
22 to
show on
25.
that.
Yeah.
And, they need people now.
Well, great. As said, we have Dan Feehan, candidate for U.S. Congress. We're thankful that you're here today.
It's an honor
I
to
must
be
say,
here.
we did put out an ask to the current Congressman Hagedorn, and hopefully he will come on the show as well. But certainly we are thankful that you are here today, Dan.
I'm proud to be
It's
here.
a privilege.
Thank
Those
you.
that are in the audience and also online, you can throw in some questions. We'll try to get those to Dan as we start now. So, Dan, who are you?
Sure.
What do you mean to our community? Why are you
Yeah.
out here, driving in this crazy weather, trying to get votes?
It's beautiful. It's above 30 degrees. What more can we ask for right now?
My fault. It is a heat wave today. I'm
Heat
going
wave by
from-
comparison. Oh,
Thank you all for having me. This is an honor, and for reaching out to me too. This is truly, I've been watching over the last couple of years in particular, and I'm hoping for the chance. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I actually make it happen. My name is Dan Feehan, and I'm running to represent not just Rochester, but all of southern Minnesota in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Right.
So that means all the way over to Winona and the Wisconsin border, and then all the way to Sioux Falls, where we hit Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's a huge part of southern Minnesota, and I'm running to put people first,
Right.
like I said. And I say that both out of experiences in my own life, and because I think it's to the heart of what's wrong with politics today.
Right.
So I grew up just north of Rochester, a city called Red Wing. Live in Mankato area now with two boys in elementary school, and then a 10-week-old baby girl too. And I'm running as much for their future as I'm running to fix what's wrong right now. I joined the military when I was 19 years old. I watched the Pentagon burning on 9/11 and knew I had to step forward and act, and felt the calling to actually do something about it. Served 2 combat tours in Iraq, searching for roadside bombs, and had this incredible experience of a group of soldiers from every walk of life you can think of. U.S. military has this incredible way of, it's more diverse than the country itself.
Right.
And working together with them to find roadside bombs taught me you can work with people you don't agree with and still get things done. I was a middle school teacher as well. I taught 100% African American community in Gary, Indiana. And
Gary, Indiana.
Very special place.
Next down. Indianapolis.
Oh, there we go.
Gary's little Chicago.
Oh, that's right. That's good. Where you from?
Yeah, we claim Gary.
That's true.
Yeah.
It ain't, when you're a teacher, when you're a soldier, there's no other option. People have to come first.
Right.
Because there's the consequences of failing are life and death, really, at the end of it. And these experiences are what motivate me to run for Congress and to represent Southern Minnesota, because I think that's a value that we share in common here.
Yeah.
We're in Rochester right now, but you go 5 miles in any direction, and there's farmland.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
we rely on each other, we depend on each other, but I think we're losing sight of that.
Right.
And our campaign, when I say people first, is to talk about that leadership experience and what we expect Congress to be, but it's also to talk about my opponent too, because he is someone who has put people last.
Right.
Time and time again. Who divides people, who fights people in Facebook comment sections on the weekends, and who, instead of taking people and putting them first, he puts corporations first. He puts pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies first. And working people right now who are struggling to afford prescription drugs or health insurance can look at that and say, this is not a person fighting for me.
Wow. So you're a former military.
Yes, sir.
A teacher.
Yes.
You have a lot of how can I say this? You can relate to a lot of people.
Yes.
That relates to represent. Kind of like your predecessor or the predecessor, Tim Wong. He
Sure.
was a teacher as well.
Sure.
Former military. How can you bring that into Washington, D.C. for regular folks?
So I had this, after I was a soldier and teacher, I worked in the Pentagon and had a chance to,
That's right.
during the Obama administration, had a chance to try to make our military ready and service members ready for life afterwards too. And I got, a great lesson in humility. All of these experiences are. When you're a soldier, it's a daily lesson in humility. When you're in front of middle schoolers, it's an hourly lesson in humility. And making policy was no different, because I found out, and this tends to be what's broken with Washington, people who are like-minded tend to only work with each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
Until it's the end game, right? And then at the end, they find out they don't have anything in common, and the stakes are really high, and no one backs down.
Right.
But what I learned through humility is the idea that if you approach the person you know is going to disagree with you first, you learn, one, your ideas aren't as good as you think they are, which is a humbling thing to learn, right? But then you find a real human relationship there and build off that. And before the stakes are too high for anyone to get anything done. I think that's what Washington needs, and the only reason I know to do that is because of public service. That's what taught me that. In the same way I saw it for roadside bombs, or tried to take kids in Gary and help them to understand someone cared about their future as well.
That
in
is
the same way.
great. So Washington, one thing I heard, and particularly with the passing of the great John McCain, that he left an era, with his passing, and now we have hyper-partisanship, and we don't have that type of leader that can reach across the aisle, and also we don't have that inspirational leader. Is that a thing of the past? Can folks in politics be the inspirational leader that John McCain and others have?
Absolutely, and I'm someone who looks at 2020 with a great degree of optimism. You don't go through life and death circumstances and not come out an optimist. Everyone's had tough experiences in life, and what they teach you is you got to look to the positive things. And the way I look at a broken Washington, D.C. is full of people who are satisfied with the status quo.
Right.
That status quo is driven by, in large part, massive corporations who control the people in Washington. And my opponent, Jim Hagedorn, is an example of that.
And you feel you can stand up to that.
Well,
that's a big.
It's all about your ability to maintain your integrity. It's truly your only credit in life, right? That's your reputation. That's everything that precedes you. And the way we do that on a campaign trail, I don't take any money from corporate PACs because I don't want them influencing me in Washington, D.C.
Right.
No corporation is going to influence how I vote on behalf of people. Again, at the end of it,
That is great.
Democrats and Republicans take that money and it changes the way they vote.
It does.
The reason things are a status quo that's broken for so many people. I mean, think about the people you know in your life who can't afford prescription drugs or health care right now. That's insane. That's insane that exists for Americans right now, and it stays that way because there are companies that benefit off this situation.
Oh, absolutely.
And benefit means a great amount of profit from it. And until we elect people who will maintain their integrity through that, Washington won't change until we have campaigns that put people first and invite people in, especially the voiceless.
Campaign finance reform.
Yeah, that has to be a part of this. Yes,
I think.
huge part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if anybody has questions, certainly throw those in. We are struggling with, and this is my opinion, and we've talked about it on the show, gentrification, if you will. And obviously, DMC here is great, Mayo is great, and this is no diss to the largest employer of Minnesota. However, it has a cyclical effect in impacting the community. We speak to housing and wages and so on and so forth, where folks cannot live here in a way that's successful for them. And talking with Ben, it's a problem nationwide. How can you address that on the national level where it would hit us here?
Yes, there is every community is full of stakeholders. The problem that tends to happen is that the stakeholders who have outsized influence tend to drive conversations, right? And that leads to communities growing with an imbalance. Community grows and there's not affordable housing to match it.
Right.
Jobs created, but nowhere for people to live.
Right.
I mean, and these mismatches are all that come from that imbalance. Again, to the idea of what I can do at a national level, be a voice that it be as beholden to the people as I am anything else. Right? And the whole point of campaigns is to establish those relationships.
Right, right.
So that when you actually get to Washington, D.C., you know who to turn back and talk to.
Right, right.
Because let me tell you, this is what tends to happen. If you don't do that, if you don't build real relationships with people, when you get to Washington, D.C., it doesn't mean you're going to come up with it on your own. Something's going to fill it in.
Right, right.
And what fills it in is this incredible lobbying industry that lobbies on behalf, again, of business. That includes the development of housing along with it. Someone's going to give you an opinion if you don't know where to search for one yourself.
That's right.
So
That's right.
relationships we build on the campaign trail are with communities of color, and they're with the housing development that's going on in much the same way, so that I can have an equal footing to have both be heard. So that when it comes to federal influence on housing policy, for example, Olmsted County is able to actually get what it needs rather than getting what suits some people and not others. So that you have people, I've talked to in Rochester, rents doubling and tripling over the last couple of years,
Crazy.
being forced to live well outside the community and then have no mass transit to actually get to your jobs and communities here, right? These issues are tied, and when there's that imbalance and no voice there to actually call for a rebalancing, corporations are going to be what tends to win out, and not people at the end of it.
So how do you feel about wages and how you do have the lower middle class?
Yeah.
Most parents are working.
Yes.
And but they're still struggling.
Yeah,
They
we-
make too much money for welfare, but then
Right.
they don't make enough money to be financially stable.
Right.
So
It-
the wages don't really is not caught up to what the economy is
Yeah.
asking for.
Right, or don't make enough
Don't make enough.
to be able to afford childcare. So then, what do? do you work or you stay home? Do you?
Take a job and then
Every-
to make ends meet, but then you don't have the child care.
Yeah, it's twofold. People need to be being better compensated, but then the costs of living that we all experience that are growing far higher than the rising of wages have to be addressed too. Because if you're not fixing the cost of health care and just talking about wages, well, it's a matter of time before it gets ahead of it yet again.
People have to, yes.
So you think we should have free healthcare? Like Canada and,
I think people should be able to earn their keep right now, and what happens in this country is that people aren't able to earn that. People work 2 and 3 jobs, none of which provide benefits like healthcare, and that's the great injustice right now. And when you experience that, you can't help but come away with the takeaway that you don't matter, because you're doing everything right. You're working hard, 2 and 3 jobs, and somehow it's not enough. Somehow those benefits don't come away from it. But if instead there was an actual affordable option for healthcare for you to buy into, like say Medicare, that you could buy into the program of Medicare, then suddenly things change for you, and you have that feeling that you have inherent human value, which is what our economy, we get told all the time how great our economy is working, but it's working very well for a specific group of people, and not so well for the rest, and it kind of puts us in a tough spot right now.
and you talked about, for as the cost of, medicine and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Especially our elderly,
Yes.
is really suffering,
Yes.
right? And so what are some of your plans to say, that if you get elected to try to lower
Yeah.
that or the cost of
Yeah.
medicine?
There was a bill passed by the House of Representatives just a couple weeks ago, bipartisan bill that would have aimed to lower prescription drug costs, especially for the elderly with Medicare, because it would have allowed Medicare to negotiate with drug companies. We're the only civilized nation in this world in which we can't negotiate with drug companies. We have to just take the price given to us. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies are making billions in profit right now. Billions of profit that's just passed on to everyone. That's a simple, straightforward solution that, again, was bipartisan in nature, but our representative here in southern Minnesota voted against it. And he happens to take money from pharmaceutical companies. So again, campaign finance gets tied into here.
Right,
And the
absolutely.
influences. Rather than talking to the people here who are actually paying those costs, he's answering to the talking points of pharmaceutical companies instead. And that, again, people first. This is what that change, that no matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, or feel like you don't have a political party right now, that strain between people versus corporations is something I really want to make sure that people understand what's happening.
You just mentioned the independents. It seems to me that there's a growing middle.
Yeah.
Neither Democrat, neither Republican.
Yeah.
There's a growing middle. How do you get those folks engaged where they're like, these two extremes are crazy? And I would assume, and I don't know this, that a lot of southern Minnesota are a lot of those folks in the middle.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with voting, like some people that voted for Trump voted for Obama. It's
Yeah.
like, whoa. How do you engage those folks?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting with the reality that your neighbors here in Rochester, the voting shows the record. There's people that are your neighbors that voted for George W. Bush, voted for Barack Obama twice, and then voted for Donald Trump. Look, and there's nothing wrong. There's people. I know politics likes to make people think that they have to identify with one group. That you're just a part of this, or you're not. You're part of this tribe, or you're not. You're something else, and that other thing is bad, inherently bad. But the reality is, most people don't want to be described that way.
Right.
People are complicated. They're not A or B.
I would think the younger generation is like that too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And you have to have a mindful to that. And so what I very much want to carry is the idea of independent leadership. Because I think what's broken about Washington right now is people beholden to their political party above their country. And that leads to inaction. And it leads to a bunch of people have a low opinion of Congress because they disagree and then they come home. Think of another job like that, where you could just disagree all day, not get anything done, and then come home.
Keep your job.
And hold on to your job, term after term. And so it's I think people, especially who are working as hard as what we've just talked about here, at a time where wage inequality is growing more and more and more right now, to be able to have a campaign structured around the idea that they're not beholden to corporations, but instead to people, and that they're approaching it with public service. Because again, we want to get things done. That's the idea of it. And there are a lot of people with service backgrounds. You don't have to be a military veteran or a teacher who apply the same mindset of getting things done at the end of the day and being beholden to people instead.
You've talked a lot about partisanship, and it would be remiss if we didn't talk about the big eye that's going on in Washington right now. And in 2020, if you're elected, you're going to be walking into, regardless of which side, what comes across in those hearings, you're going to be walking into some craziness.
Yeah.
How are you the guy to go into whichever side is disenfranchised and try to help mend things and move forward?
I do it trusting that I've walked into some craziness before.
I guess so. Chasing down bombs, that was
I was a 23-year-old kid, terrified out of my mind, deploying to Iraq for the first time, and to be I was in charge of 24 soldiers. So put in a position where you better step up, because people's lives are relying on you there. And I walk away from that with a lot of wisdom, because thankfully my failures weren't of such great consequence that it changed my life entirely, but I grew from it.
Right.
And to have that experience and to walk, very simply, I've been through worse.
Yeah.
I really have.
Yeah.
And come away that there are folk alive today because of the leadership I was able to put into a place as bad as war, that there are kids in college today because I got to be their math teacher. And you have to look at things with that amount of optimism at a time where really people feel disenfranchised. Yeah. You know, I'd say so. I ran in 2018 here. We lost by one of the smallest margins in the country, just over 1,000 votes here in southern Minnesota.
Wow.
It's a matter of inches in politics.
Yeah.
But the reality, everything we're talking about today, when I get asked whether it's more fun to lose by inches or by miles, I'm lucky I'm sitting here today because bullets miss by inches. Yeah. Bombs miss by inches.
That's right.
But the reality is so many people every single day living their lives by inches.
Wow.
Healthcare and beyond.
Like working, was it inner city school or was it?
Yeah.
It was inner city school, right? I assume it was public school, right?
Yes.
What was your experience like? With the kids, I'm quite sure you've probably seen the gaps and you're talking everything like that. And since you had that experience, right? What would you try to do from, if you get elected, to try to help Minnesota close those gaps?
That come with it.
Good question.
Well, I mean, there's so much to it. I mean, I was lucky to have been in the military before I was a teacher, because there's some commonalities between middle schoolers and soldiers there that you have to command a presence in a room that earns respect. You know, and even as a first-year teacher, it's hard. You're going to fail, and you have to learn from it. But what any human being, just a middle schooler is no different, wants someone to believe in them, wants someone to demonstrate that they are smart and that they can learn. Just really simple thing, and that's hard to get across. But to do that in a room full of 30 kids gives me the confidence to know that we can apply that to our policy making too. And so that a community like Rochester can have teachers who are compensated well for their work, which is something we don't do, which makes it hard to have the best teachers possible in our classroom. can have classrooms that attend to the needs of a very diverse group of students. Think about Rochester here again, which means our English language learners, our special education students, and so that the federal government's paying their bills so that no school district is forced to take that money from elsewhere, so that the needs of every student are met, and at the end of the day, a great teacher sitting in front of them, empowering them to believe in their own intelligence and their own abilities. That's what our classrooms can deliver, but they fail every single day because the federal government as a partner doesn't deliver on those things. Teachers have too much student loan debt to continue in the occupation. We don't fund our schools fully, especially when it comes to those ways that I talked about right now. But that's the potential we have here, because we are kidding ourselves if we are thinking that the 21st century economy is going to stay static.
Right.
It's going to change constantly. Our kids right now, my 9-year-old, my 6-year-old, are going to have to be adaptive learners their entire lives. And we are failing to set them up for success. If you go down the road, I-90 a bit to Fairmont, Minnesota, where broadband internet's a huge thing. If there's no internet in your community, how can you expect to be on the same footing as anyone else? There are so many ways in which we fail, and this is the difference in the concept between equality and equity, right? If we're not delivering communities to the things that they need and that they are short on, then we fail as policymakers, as parents, and as members of the community who are as equally invested in the success of our kids as if they were our
A
own.
lot about obviously minorities here, the impoverished, the voiceless. One thing we don't talk about is 1% of our nation are military.
Yeah.
From what I read.
Yes.
And those folks, when you think about how they're represented in some of those issues, 1% of them, and it seems as though because of that we don't help them out as much. I just read that I think 22 folks in that bombing in Iran have TBIs.
Brain injuries.
Fortunately, here in Olmsted County, we just started our own. Well, actually, throughout the 3rd District, we started our own Veterans Court. What can you say to that 1%? Obviously, being a veteran, and we thank you for your service to those young men and young women who have served this country, who are throughout the South community, and I'm sure they feel voiceless as well.
Yeah, the military is one of an experience I will forever be grateful for. Shaped who I am, shaped my leadership, and it's also one of the more empowering places that no institutions America has, as far as taking someone, especially, which is hard to do, from a lower socioeconomic level and propel them into a higher one.
Right.
But we fail to do that if a military service member leaves and then doesn't find an even better experience outside.
Right.
If they, which we have struggled with, can't find housing, good jobs. If the schools that they go to take advantage of them, which a lot of for-profit schools do on this account.
Absolutely.
And those are things that people have to have an awareness of right now, because there's a lot of things going really well. There's nonprofits here in Minnesota that have made a huge dent in veteran homelessness, for example.
Right.
But the idea that a 22-year-old could get out of the military with incredible leadership skills, but then not have them taken advantage of by a company in any way,
That's right. Yeah.
we fall short on
Right.
that. And that's a community of welcoming back, which is really hard to do when it's less than 1%.
Right.
You don't know that
Yeah.
someone's a veteran, right?
That's right.
But there's a great veterans office right here in Olmsted County that does a great job in making sure we find opportunities. And if you haven't visited them and partnered with the veteran service officer here, that's a great way for the small businesses of Rochester to actually know who's coming back home.
Right. Well, hey, we got to get you out of here in about 10 minutes. So if anybody has a question, please throw it in. We have a couple more questions. So if you got one, please throw it in. As it relates to this partisanship, how can you come back to our district and help us? Like, hey, things are changing. How can you help us? Because we just see what's on TV, MSNBC, Fox News.
Yeah.
I know all you love Fox. Okay, Fox. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't joke. But we see this partisanship. How can you? And I will say this about our current person in Congress. I'm not even talking about his politics. I think his responsibility is come back to this community and say, hey, it's crazy there, but guess what? This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing to mend fences. Will you be that type of politician that communicates with us on what's going on?
100%. I mean, the people are who you are beholden to.
Right.
Especially the people that don't vote for you.
Right.
That's the way I view it. Because
That's good. Oh, did y'all hear that?
Good
Did you hear that?
Good answer.
This is a place that they would call politically purple. That's what Southern Minnesota is.
Right,
And,
right.
and to be able to vote for the presidential candidates I just talked about here, that's the dynamic of it. You are beholden. This is what my leadership principle taught me, because there was no soldier I said, I don't like your politics, so I'm not gonna take care of you. There's certainly no student that I said that to. It's just, you don't have that luxury. When, especially your oath is to the Constitution. It's not to a political party. It is to the Constitution to support and defend it, and it is to the people here. And just to take an issue and tie it. We got Highway 14 right here, right?
Absolutely.
This is a tough stretch of road. It's a tough
Oh
stretch
my
of road
goodness.
for those outside of Rochester, but what you might not know
Get us some
realize,
federal dollars, Dan.
you
Get
go,
that thing.
go even further, go west of me, and we have lost three people in the last week.
Oh wow.
West of Mankato.
Yeah.
3 people, and another stretch that's 2 lane.
Wow.
And it's an issue that is a federal issue, but it's local at the same time.
That's true,
Because
that's
if we
true.
cannot safely get to our communities, if our farmers don't have the infrastructure to be able to travel roads safely,
That's true.
that impacts all of us. And it's a federal issue because it's something that we were promised we were gonna get federal funding for.
Right.
And because of someone's particular relationship with this administration, was gonna get that for us, and they failed. And people have, the policy is a matter of life and death. And back to the original question,
Right.
if you don't engage with politics, politics engages with you.
Yeah,
That's it,
it'll
whether you want it
extend.
or not.
Right.
And when I say it's a matter of life and death, that plays out in every way we talk about today.
You got a question? I'm sorry. If anybody got a question, or anybody in the crowd, or that's looking online, got a question, tune in, we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, it was the last election, you were kind of being pointed as somebody from outside.
Yeah.
How do you counter that, this election cycle?
Yeah.
Different.
Sure. No, I mean, I talk about why Southern Minnesota is my home, why it's always been what I view to be my home, especially when you're sitting in Iraq on a real bad day in combat, you think about what got you there.
Wow.
And the decisions you made and why you're doing it in the first place. And for me, it has always been a Southern Minnesota that inspired me to do something like that in the first place. And for a family that's growing, like I said, I got two boys in elementary school. We had welcomed Maeve, my daughter, about 10 weeks ago at the Mayo Clinic Mankato. This is the future that is my family's future, and it is the future, hopefully, of their family's future going forward here too. And I have as much invested and view their future as I would for any student going forward, or any child of this district. And service has taken me to some tough places, but I hope service propels me to be able to represent Southern Minnesota and give back for a guy who's had incredible experiences and is lucky to be sitting here. I hope to be able to return that favor through service.
We're akin to a lot of racial justice champions.
Yes.
That's an issue, and obviously exacerbated by this current administration, up or down. What can you do? And it's a big issue.
Yeah,
And I'm sure
no,
you can't
no
hit
doubt.
everything to assure folks that those issues, particularly going forward, will be dealt with in a way that's positive.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I'm someone who comes to view the issue of racial justice through the lens of my own experience, and the fact that I sit here as a straight white male too as well, and so has to realize what the privilege of my existence is, the power of the existence of that demographic in particular.
Right.
And being aware of that is the starting point. But my experiences have taught me, being in Gary, teaching students in Gary in particular, and then studying it and think about it. Racism is both structural as it is cultural.
Right.
There are a lot of politicians who will try to say, A, it doesn't exist
Right.
in the first place, or say it's one or the other.
Right.
It's just structural. You just fix the structural problems and it goes away.
Right.
Or it's just a cultural issue.
Right.
The way I come to view it, and the way I view it through a lens of policy, is that it is both. It is structural in the sense that this demonstrated communities of color, particularly African Americans, have a tougher time securing affordable housing, loans,
Right.
jobs, and are incarcerated at a rate that is far higher than any other.
Absolutely.
And so if that's the case,
Yes.
right, and I'm gonna go down those, if that's the case, I mean, you're one of the first people that I heard that pinpoint African Americans. I think oftentimes that we're afraid we lump every group in it, right?
Sure.
And first, we know, right? In the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, rest of, it's those who was enslaved here on the land, in America. The Martin Luther King talked about, we're the only group of people was taken and enslaved here in America. And that's why we see, I think, the highest rates of gaps in everything. So why is it that I'm finding that I see politicians and locally in France or to the White House scared to earmark dollars specifically saying that we need to deal with this issue, right? And then having someone who looked like them allocate the money to.
And that's where I think we talked about there's been a failure here. Because in theory, there's a Fair Housing Act. In theory, there's every type of law to secure the principle of equality, but we know in practice those laws are not upheld.
Yeah.
And a Congress's job is to do multiple things. It's the less interesting part of the job, but it's to ask this question: are the laws currently on books working? Often politicians like to celebrate that they pass laws. They don't like to talk about, well, do we actually look at whether what's on the books is working? And those are ways that I can pledge to be able to look at that and do it differently. And then to the things we talk about when achieving equity as this idea, where are the communities in which the history, the context that you just laid out that's demonstrated that our present is informed by the past, and to pretend that it's not is putting your head in the sand when it comes to it. So this is something that I think about as an awareness of a policymaker on top of the many different diverse groups that are here and part of our communities too.
Yeah, great.
Now I want to speak. I know we got a lot of time. Quickly on prison reform. How you feel about prison reform? Also, how the dispensaries are getting real popular nowadays. But what about the people that's still in jail for marijuana crime? How do you feel about that?
There's a concept of restorative justice.
That's what I mean.
And restorative justice is as much to the crimes that we're talking about and in a prison system that is profit driven. There's a kind of a theme throughout this. When things are profit driven, whether it's the prescription drugs, health insurance, prison systems, there's incentives created. And those incentives are maybe at odds. It's the nicest way I could possibly say it.
Absolutely.
With doing right by people. And so I'm somebody advocating that the idea of restorative justice be both the laws that are on the land when it comes to nonviolent drug offenses, as well as looking to ensure that there is no private incentive to have people incarcerated, which is part of the system we have right now.
Wow. Well, Dan, I'm going to get you out of here. One question we ask all of our guests.
Sure.
There's a young lady and a young man out there that's looking and seeing you and all your greatness, and thank you for coming here. We really appreciate this. But they can't see themselves as a Dan Feehan.
Yeah.
What positive words would you give those young men? And also, there could be some incarcerated individuals that, hey, I want to be someone of a positive influence. What words of wisdom or positivity could you give them?
And also the people that don't trust politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they don't trust the politics, why should I vote for you? What you gonna do that they didn't do for me?
Right.
You know, so let's hear it.
In the same way, I once stood in front of a platoon of soldiers and asked them to trust me. And in the same way, I stood in front of a group of 10, 11-year-olds and asked them to trust me. In the same way, it was never this center and focus on myself. It was the idea that it was a partnership, that there's a give and take, that we're not going to find roadside bombs unless you help me figure out how we're going to find roadside bombs. We're not going to learn pre-algebra unless you're as equally invested in this as I am for you. There's a relationship there. And similarly in politics isn't going to change unless you are equally invested in as the people you are choosing to be your elected representatives. There's a very simple idea that anyone cynical about politics today and about your life in southern Minnesota, there's this idea I like to put out. Everything about our political system right now is made to make you feel like you don't matter, to divide you, to make you feel less, to make you feel like your concerns aren't real, and to make you feel like your lot in life is just, that's it. Just work harder. That's part of it.
Right.
When everything about that is meant to protect the status quo that prevents healthcare from being more affordable, prescription drugs from being more affordable, housing, and truly achieving equity in every way in terms of racial justice along the way. And the idea that is very simple that I try to promote, and I learned this back when I was in the Army and in the Pentagon, is either everyone matters or no one does. Because any group that is made to still feel marginalized, then that means collectively we have some work to do. You know, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day earlier this week. It's something that I don't know if Southern Minnesotans realize the history we have here is really cool. He visited Mankato, Minnesota in 1961.
Whoa, he came to Minnesota?
Yeah, Mankato, Minnesota in 1961.
Information right there.
Yeah, he came.
Check it out, it's on our Facebook. He gave these incredible speeches. And speeches I couldn't find that he gave elsewhere, maybe he did. One was called the Good Neighbor speech. It's this really beautiful idea that, you know, we are all neighbors to each other.
Right.
Neighbor doesn't mean you're best friends with someone. Neighbor means you're neighbor with someone, right? And the idea he was trying to convey is that everything is interdependent.
Right.
We rely on each other. So someone's success, no matter who they are, no matter what group they belong with, no matter what the history is there, their success is everyone's success. Their lack of success or their struggle every single day is everyone's struggle. It's such a beautiful idea that has to cut across both racial lines, socioeconomic lines. That's the idea. So if you are sitting there cynical about politics right now, get involved in our campaign. Because you can have an incredible influence not just on the future of Southern Minnesota, but the future of our politics as well.
there you have it, Barbershop Talk. I think one of the main things where, I think there's a quote, if you're not, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I'll say it anyway. If you're not cooking, you're on the menu or something like that. All that to say you need to be involved in politics, or politics is going to be over you. And I think you really hit that thing today. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Barbershop Talk.
Come check out danfeehan.com or come to our Facebook group. Get involved.
All right. See y'all tomorrow. Superintendent Munoz is here. Rochester Public School.
Invite. Y'all can come out.
Yeah,
we go.
All right. Questions for the superintendent? Come out tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.